Hello there, and welcome to this week's edition of Money Matters, because after all, money does matter. I want to start by asking you 3 questions. I wrote them down in this book. Number 1, is it okay to legally, officially, using government schemes, pay 0 income tax? Let's have a look at that and get underneath it. Number 2, would you pay £31,483 for a 15-page report? What? Number 3, next steps. If you would like to earn £1 million whilst saving £458,860 in tax per person per year, is that really possible? Well, follow me. We'll go and find out, shall we? Let's walk up here and have a sit down. If you want to learn more about this stuff, I'm marching up the garden on the French Riviera, and I'm going to get my laptop out because it's a bit more technical than some Money Matters. So I'm actually going to share with you a PowerPoint presentation, and I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to Thiel sur Mer. And what I want to talk to you about on this Money Matters is how to pay 0 income tax. Is that legally, morally okay? And because it's a bit more technical than usual, this is very strange for me. I've actually got notes here. I've got a PowerPoint in front of me because I want to get it right. I think this is super important and I absolutely want to get it right. So for this Money Matters, I've done quite a bit of research and I've pulled together information from a website called Statista, which is a great source of information, Investopedia, which is another great source of information, the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, which is obviously the government, effectively, Office of Budget Responsibility, effectively the government, House of Commons Library, the government, Institute of Fiscal Studies, interestingly not the government, but it's a pretty well-respected independent think tank. So I think it was formed in 1969, and it was really formed to allow political debate to be informed by the actual numbers instead of he said, she said. So yeah, I think pretty much all sides recognise the importance of the IFS. Financial Times, sure you heard of that. Wall Street Journal, sure you heard of that. Take-home salary calculator, you might not have heard of that. So anyway, here we go. First up, where does the government get its money from? Well, look at that, that's fascinating. I mean, it changes a bit year to year, but this is a pretty recent and reasonable shape. Income tax, 25%, so £1 in 4 comes from income tax. National insurance contributions, not far behind. Don't know if you knew that. NI, national insurance, because that comes from employers and employees. So it's a double whammy for the government, lots of cash. Next up, we got VAT at 18%. Whoa, that's a biggie. And number 4, look at that, property taxes. Now, I'm guessing you're watching this because you're interested in investing in property, becoming wealthy through property, and you're probably, I don't know if you'd agree with this, it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. After tax, that is. The top 4, income tax, national insurance, VAT, and property taxes, stamp duty, that sort of stuff, they combine to be more than £7 out of 10 of the government's income. So I don't know if you knew that corporation taxes, capital taxes, fuel duties were all comparatively small compared to all these other things. I'm looking at this in this week's edition from a perspective of, well, what does the government want us entrepreneurs, in my case, a property entrepreneur, to do? How can we help balance the books of UK PLC? And is that a good thing to do? Well, clearly, they want us to stimulate more income tax. They want us to stimulate more national insurance contributions. They want us to stimulate more VAT, and they want us to stimulate more property taxes. Now, I'll keep coming back to this, but effectively, if I as a property entrepreneur can either directly or indirectly create a job, so in other words, one of my team that works for us, we've now got 35 staff across our various companies, well, they obviously earn money, and through PAYE, pay as you earn, that means we as a group of companies pay a huge amount of income tax on behalf, well, our employees do, but if we weren't there and they weren't employed, then that wouldn't happen. Ditto national insurance contributions and ditto VAT, because we've just put that amount of extra revenue, that extra income into the economy, which means our staff, our team, go and spend money. But in addition to that, every time we buy a house, what happens? Well, it needs to get fixed up, so we're going to employ builders to do refurbs, we're going to employ carpenters, plumbers, we're going to go to carpet shops and spend money, we're going to go to trade suppliers and spend money. So all of those things, either the direct taxes from us paying stamp duty when we buy a property, plus the indirect taxes, income tax, national insurance, VAT, that we cause when we stimulate demand, when we create employment, is what the government really wants us to do, because that's how it earns 7 out of every 10 of its pounds. So let's just bear that in mind as we go through the figures. But let's start with this. Is the government going to go bankrupt? We're wasting our time because someone's about to turn the lights out because the UK is skint. You could look at this in a relatively narrow perspective, 1994 through to the present day, and you will see that government debt has been going up and up and up and up. And generally speaking, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, says that if you're above 60% national debt, GDP, gross domestic product, so the entire output of the whole country put together in monetary terms, divided by the national debt, if that's 60% or more, that's dangerous. We went over 60%, unsurprisingly perhaps, in the 2008-2009 financial crisis. You can see that there. But here's the bad news. That's only till the end of 2020. What about coronavirus? Well, we'll get to that in a second. But you can see for the 1990s, we were sort of wobbling about, and the early 2000s, around about the 40%. Started going up, and then we got crippled by that 2008-2009, Lehman Brothers, the banks going bust, government had to inject tons of money to save this company, that company, and the other company. At the end of 2020, the national debt as a percentage of GDP was 84.6%. That's significant. It's above the 60%, so we should of course be concerned. So will COVID-19 literally going to finish us off? At an individual level, obviously tragic, but at a national level, is this the end of all things? So 2005, 2006, you can see what happened there. So this is now the government budget deficit. How much extra are they having to borrow as a percentage of the GDP every year to keep the country moving? Well, look at that spike. I mean, we hit a spike of 10% during the 2008-2009 crisis. Other than that, we've generally been wobbling around at sort of 3 to 6%, that sort of number, over the last 15 years. But there are various forecasts. Well, the Office for Budget Responsibility says, anywhere between about, 16-17% and 22-23%. This COVID lockdown financial impact is going to be at least double what the 2008-2009 financial crisis was, if you measure it as a percentage of our GDP in terms of the budget, the government budget deficit. Hope this isn't too confusing for you. Chillax is my main message, because I'm a student of history. My father was a historian, he taught me many things, bless him. But if you look back in the context of the last 100 years, and now you look at debt, look at that. Great Depression, World War I, we were up close to 200%. End of World War II, 250%. And then it gradually came down all the way through the 50s, 60s, 70s, not because the government was paying it off, by the way, because governments don't tend to do that. It was shrinking because the economy was expanding. So the way to reduce national debt, typically, as a percentage of your GDP, is to make your economy bigger. It's to grow. That's why politicians, economists are so focused on growth. So you can see during the 90s and the early 2000s, you could argue, in terms of the last century, it would be correct, that we're at an all-time low, actually, in terms of the last 100 years. So to be below 40% historically was brilliant. But then obviously it's gone up. You can see what happened there. It jumped from under 50% to like 60, 70% as a result of the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. And look at what they're projecting in terms of that yellow line right on the end. The projection is the debt at the end of 2021, because these figures aren't confirmed yet, this is very recent data as I'm recording this, it will be 97.9%, so tantalisingly close to 100% of GDP, because during COVID, two things have happened. Number one, we've had a contraction in GDP, many things have been shut, and it's been very difficult for restaurants and pubs and everything else, so the GDP has gone down and the debt has gone up, which is horrible from the government's perspective. It is the complete opposite of what they want. So I'm saying chillax, relax, because in historical terms, it still ain't that bad. It takes us back to where we were in the 60s, but we're about to come out of this, aren't we? So as long as the economy goes back to where it was and starts growing again, there's many things going in the government's favour, in our favour as citizens. And it's fantastic news for property investors. Why? So this isn't the government's income now, this is the government expenditure. So this is how they classify it. So this is the OBR and the Treasury. So social protection, personal social services, health, so the NHS, transport, education, schools, that sort of thing, universities, defence, they're all the big spenders. But look at where debt interest is. Even with these enormous national debts, the debt interest is, and I say this advisedly, is only 56 billion. Now, in the context of all those other numbers, what we're paying for our national debt is roughly the same as what we're spending on defence. As long as it's managed sensibly, it is certainly not the end of the world. But look at this. This is very interesting. How much interest does the government pay on its borrowing? So this is central government, UK government debt interest as a percentage of GDP. Everything tends to be measured as a percentage of GDP, gross domestic product, the entire value of all the products and services that UK PLC makes. In the 70s, it used to consume 2%, so the debt payments consumed 2% of the GDP equivalent. But if we then go into the 80s, mid-80s, it jumped up to 4%, and it's been falling ever since then. How's that possible, Paul? The debt's going up, but the cost to service the debt has been going down. What's that all about? Well, this is fascinating. And this is why I say this is great news for property investors. The government is almost boxed into a corner. It has to keep interest rates extremely low because of the size of its own debts. So it's going to do things that will reward people that borrow money to make money implicitly. Because if the cost of debt is kept low, then mortgages and loans and anybody that wants to borrow to invest is going to do very, very well, aren't they? Who's the government borrow from? What do? They go to the Lloyds Bank or TSB and say, can I have a few quid? No, they don't. Rather than borrowing from banks, the government typically borrows from the market. Primarily pension funds, insurance companies, and that sort of stuff. We've got this bank, we've got a huge economy, we're pretty well organised by international standards, and we've never defaulted on our debt. Other countries have, we never have. That's why, if you like, the institutions are willing to buy government debt, effectively lend the government money. Look at this from the Wall Street Journal. So the UK government sells bonds at a negative yield for the first time. What does that mean? What it means is, look at this chart. The 10-year bonds are still positive. They're 0.25% is the yield. That's the interest you get paid on it. So you lend the government, I don't know, £100 million, and they pay you 0.25% interest, and not very exciting, for me anyway, but it is if you're a big institution that's thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with all this cash? Because there's more cash in the world than there ever has been before. 3-year debt is close to zero, but 2-year debt is negative. When did it go negative? Well, this is a report from the Financial Times. UK sells negative yielding government bonds for the first time ever. Is taxing the rich even more an option? Because, remember from that tax pie chart, the top contributor to government coffers is income tax. Make the rich pay, they're not paying enough. This might shock you. If you look on the right hand side of those two bar charts, share of income by income tax payers. What that means is the far right hand side is the top 1%. So the top 1% earn 11.8% of the money, of the total salaries. But they also pay 27% of the total income tax. Being part of that 1%, well done you if you are, thanks very much, because you are paying 27% of the total income tax. But this is truly shocking. The top 50% of earners pay 90% of the income tax. Should we keep bashing the people that earn a lot of money, or should we maybe look at, is there another way? And that's effectively what the government does. How can property entrepreneurs help UK PLC? Well, they can do things to directly or indirectly create jobs, because a job is going to create income tax, national insurance. The people that earn that money are going to go and spend VAT. And if we're buying properties, we're also hitting property taxes. So by buying properties, painters, bricklayers, carpenters, estate agents, solicitors, accountants, the number of people that get paid when you or me go and buy a property is huge. And then that hits all four of those things. So clearly, the government wants to incentivise us property entrepreneurs to go and do more of that and to create more employment. Oh, and by the way, create more homes as well, because we've got this massive housing crisis, haven't we? How do the government reward property entrepreneurs? And this is where it gets really, really interesting. In the budget, there was a temporary agreement to increase the annual investment allowance. What the hell's that, and why is it relevant to me as a property investor? Well, let me get there slowly. Let's do this one step at a time. For years and years and years, it's been £200,000. 2 years ago, the annual investment allowance would temporarily go up from £200,000 to £1 million a year. And then that was extended for a third year. So this is now the third year, and it's temporary. I've seen this sort of thing before. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Chancellor pops up next year and says, well, actually, this has been such a success, we're going to make it permanent. So they're sort of playing with it. They don't want to commit themselves. But I would not be at all surprised if they didn't make it permanent. So go to Investopedia. What does it mean? What is the annual investment allowance? The annual investment allowance is a form of tax relief for British businesses, investors, that allows a business, or actually it's also a person or an LLP, limited liability partnership, to deduct the total amount of qualifying expenditure up to a certain limit, in this case £1 million, from its taxable profits or your personal income tax in a given tax year. What that means is, if I decode it into a layperson's English, is you can earn £1 million completely tax-free this financial year. Happy days. So, the general description of the measure. This is from the government's own website. The measure will temporarily increase the amount of annual investment allowance from £200,000 to £1 million for expenditure on plant and machinery for the period of 1st January to 31st December 2021. So my advice to you, if you fancy a bit of this, is get them skates on and get skating. So what does it look like as far as property investment is concerned? Well, we bought that. That's our head office. That's a 10,000 square foot office building in Doncaster in February. It was actually February the 28th, 2020. And because we bought that and then we refurbished it and did it up, and because we've done that, the government says you can have some tax breaks. They are called, if you turn it into property speak, they are called capital allowances. You can also get capital allowances. I'm actually sat on the terrace there. You can just see. I've got the swimming pool behind me. I've got the Mediterranean out there. You can possibly see. That also qualifies because this is a holiday let. This is a furnished holiday let. £1 million per person this tax year, tax-free. Don't miss out. Now, I've said my opinion is that they're quite likely to extend the scheme, or who knows, maybe even make it permanent. But what if they don't? What if this was the last year ever where you could have earned £1 million tax-free and you didn't? You'd feel a bit of a lemon, wouldn't you? I nearly used a different word. Our office is called Synergy House, and the wonderful Bailey Group did a capital allowance survey on it. Touchstone Education LLP capital allowance report. Now, why is it Touchstone Education LLP that's got this capital allowance report? Well, it's because Touchstone Education LLP owns the building. So you can see there, look at that fee, £31,483. And by the way, even that fee is tax deductible. So it makes you feel a little bit better when you're writing the check out, doesn't it? Tax saving of £238,425. So is that a fair exchange? Are you happy to pay? Are you happy to hand over 31 grand if it avoids you paying £238,000, especially when that 31 grand is tax deductible in and of itself? Total capital allowance savings from this one building is £518,316. And I think that is a very, very fair return. What about if you want to do that too? Well, there's stuff you've got to learn, isn't there? If you're now at the stage where you're saying, I want to do that, well, here's what you do. You go along to Touchstone Education's website and you go and sign yourself up to come along to a 2-day course where me and the team will talk you all through, well, do this, do that, use this survey, don't do that, this is the law, this is how you do it properly. So come along, spend 2 days with us at Wealth Through Property. Like I said at the start, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. Now, I don't know about you, but I am perfectly okay with paying 0 income tax. By doing that, you will create massive revenue for UK PLC. And I think you deserve to be richly rewarded for it. Don't let this be the day that the sun goes down on your property investment career. And don't close the book and make judgments until you've been along to Wealth Through Property, please. You've been wonderful. I've been Paul. See you next time.